Hello and welcome to the Eerie Nerd Podcast. I'm your host Kieran, and I'll be taking you on a journey through everything geek. In this episode, I'll be taking you to South Korea to talk about the Netflix phenomena which took over the world by storm in mid-September 2021. In September 2021, millions of people around the world turned onto their Netflix account to be greeted with a strange Korean TV show plastered on their screens with unusual symbols filling one of the small squares in the list of new shows appearing on the app. The word Squid Game filled the screen. Confusion was plastered on everyone's faces. What was this strange new show? What was Squid Game? Well, in this episode, I'll be explaining exactly what Squid Game was and why it was so successful. So sit back, relax, as I tell you all about Squid Game, the Netflix phenomena of 2021. Before we can talk about the series, I want to first tell you what Squid Game was based on. Squid Game is a very popular Korean child's game, played in the playgrounds of schools and in parks all over South Korea. The game entails two people, or teams, having to combat each other within a grid drawn on the ground that roughly looks like the outline of a squid. Before starting the game, it must be decided who or which team will play the attacker and who will play the defense, as there are different restrictions for each role. The rules in the playground game are: to win, the attackers must tap the small closed-off space on the squid's head with their foot. But if someone on the defense manages to push you outside of the squid's boundary, you die. While the series itself touches on this in the opening minutes of episode 1, telling the viewers the rules of the game and showing children playing, it doesn't do a lot to explain what the series itself is actually about. And it has a very clever way of drawing the viewer in and shows the viewer everything at the same time as the protagonist, so we feel that we are right there with him. The series follows Sung Ji-han, a divorced father who is down on his luck, struggling to provide for his daughter and be a good father and a good supportive son to his elderly mother, who is starting to get to the end of her tether with his inability to provide for his family. She is old and frail and still has to work long hours on her food stall in order to maintain their very basic lifestyle. Fed up with his situation, he takes his life savings and goes to the one place where he feels he can be someone: the horse racing. He decides to gamble all of his life savings on one race, and he wins 4.5 million won. Due to his inability to save money for his family, some loan sharks who he owed money to come to collect when they find him in the toilets of the racecourse. They violently beat him and force him to sign over his winnings in his own blood, leaving him once again penniless. On his way home, bloodied and battered, he waits for his train. Whilst in the train station, he meets a well-dressed stranger who challenges him to a game. He explains the rules of the game, stating that Gi-han must choose a blue or pink square. The reasoning behind this will all become more apparent later on in the series. Whichever colour he chooses, he must try to flip the other using the one he has chosen. Every time he fails, the man slaps him. Being a gambling addict that he is, Gi-han accepts the challenge and plays the game with the stranger. And after multiple failed attempts and a very red face, Gi-han finally flips the square. The stranger gives him some money and also a business card as a prize. The card has a phone number on the back and strange symbols on the front. He's told to call that number and everything will be explained to him. Later on, after calling the number, Gi-han finds himself in a strange location with 455 other people. They're told that they have to participate in a series of games in order to win the prize money, which is suspended above them in a giant perspex piggy bank. All 456 players, including Gi-han, are in some form of financial trouble, and by agreeing to play the Squid Games, which consist of 6 games over 6 days, then they're in competition to win the money. They're told all those that complete the 6 games will win a proportion of the cash prize. The players have their phones and wallets taken away from them and are dressed in green tracksuits with numbers written on their chests and are watched over by a group of guards dressed in pink jumpsuits wearing black masks with either a triangle, circle or a square on them, depending on their rank. These also make up the symbols of the title of the series. Reluctant at first, the players argue with the guards, stating that they don't want to be part of any games because they feel that they have been kidnapped and enticed, until the guards show them their personal information as well as the amount of money that they owe. For the sake of fairness, as said by the head guard speaking to the players, the contestants are not told what the games are that they'll be playing, so every game will be a surprise to them. Eventually, the players are led out of the large room that is to become their home for the next 6 days, a room which is wall to wall of beds and acts as some sort of holding cell. They are led into a very brightly coloured corridor with staircases going all over like Hogwarts on acid. The room is very reminiscent of M.C. Escher's House of Stairs painting. The contestants are led into another room, which is made to look like they're outside. At the far end of the room is a large tree and a large doll. They're eventually told this is the first game that they will play, and the first game being one which every child would have played around the world, but with all different names. In Squid Game, it is known as Red Light, Green Light, or for our British listeners, What's the Time, Mr. Wolf? The premise being, one player turns their back to the others, and the other players ask, "What's the time, Mr. Wolf?" And the wolf says, "A number," and the other player must move that many numbers before the wolf turns around. If he catches anyone moving, they're out. In Squid Game, it's a giant doll which calls out, "Green light," and the other players have to move closer to a line on the ground. The doll will then call out, "Red light," and turn around. The players must stop in the spot. If the doll notices a player move, they are eliminated, and by eliminated, I mean killed. When the players realise this, panic ensues, and most run for the entrance, resulting in a massacre of the players, while many stay calm, staying still, because the survivors realise that they have to play the game to survive. What follows is a thrilling, gripping story of friendship, betrayal, survival, and the power that the rich have over the poor. While the storyline of Squid Game is an essay to capitalism and what the poor would do to survive, it also brings a fresh look to the survival genre touched upon with books and films such as The Hunger Games or Battle Royale. But why did Squid Game become so successful? And what does it do to separate itself from other films or shows in the genre? Squid Game was originally created all the way back in 2008 by Korean director Hwang Dong-hyuk, but it would take him nearly 12 years for it to become a reality. It came at a time when the immensely popular streaming app Netflix was expanding their catalogue of foreign films and TV shows, and when Hwang pitched the idea to Netflix, they loved it and they commissioned the show to be made, bringing us one of, if not the most popular show in Netflix's history. It is thought that 111 million people have watched at least 2 minutes of the series, according to Netflix, and 87 million people finished the entire series within the first 23 days of the series being released. One of the main plot lines which runs all the way through the series is the difference between the rich and the poor, and it really highlights the economic inequality that resonates through the world today, and especially in the current climate that the world finds itself in. With more people out of work than ever before due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the rich members of society still living lavish lifestyles while the poor suffer and struggle to put food on the table, Squid Game manages to highlight this issue by indicating that the games are controlled by a group of rich investors who have control over every aspect of the games, even down to who they want to win, by placing bets on the best players, watching the gruesome games unfold from their lavish viewing room, wearing diamond-encrusted masks to hide their true identity. What is also a poignant note is that all of the investors are either American or European, showing that the Western world has too much money and that they would spend it on something as heinous as the Squid Games. So what starts out as a game of people playing for money and survival turns into a blood sport for the disgustingly rich who must hide their identity as not to be linked with such a horrific game. It's almost as if they're Bond villains and you start to hate them towards the end, which helps you to have compassion for the players and the extent that they would go to try and get out of their financial situations. In my opinion, one of the standout moments for me in the series are the subtle hints throughout the series of what the games are going to be played. As the players die in the games, the beds in the main rooms are removed, revealing more of the walls. As the beds deplete with every game, eagle-eyed viewers would notice a mural on the wall which revealed every single game which would be played. This is something which was not apparent till around the 4th episode, but when you notice it, you suddenly get the hints. As well as the hints for the games, many viewers would notice something very odd about one of the most intriguing characters, player number 1, or Oinam. An elderly man who tells Gihan that he was diagnosed with a brain tumour and is in ailing health, and is playing the game to relive some of his childhood memories and to try and win the money so he has something to leave his family when he dies. As the series progresses, viewers start to see a friendship form between Gihan and Inam, and you start to form a love for the old man, until you find out that he is a tycoon who created the Squid Games, as revealed in the final episode of the series, and all the love you had for the character is shattered behind the illusion. As amazing as I think Squid Games is, I do feel that the show needs to be enjoyed in its native tongue of Korean with English subtitles. This, however, did come with its own level of criticism when it was revealed by eagle-eyed Korean fans in the UK that some of the subtitles did not translate properly and did not make sense. With that aside, in my opinion, you do need to watch Squid Game in Korean and not in its poorly acted American dub. By dubbing the actors, I personally feel you lose the emotion that the actors are trying to portray, as the American actors are not giving the same level of emotion as the Korean counterparts. The actors that star in Squid Game, while relatively unknown in the UK and America, unless you follow Korean cinema, are actually very famous actors in South Korea, many award-winning, such as Lee Jung-jae, who is a very successful film and TV actor in South Korea, as well as being a very successful model. And Lee Byung-hun, who has appeared in several Hollywood movies such as Red 2 and The Magnificent Seven, to name but a few. So why did Squid Game become so successful so quickly? Netflix was able to tap into a valuable resource at the time when K-media was starting to break the Western world. From Oscar-winning movies such as Parasite still fresh in people's minds, and bands such as BTS becoming household names in the UK and America, releasing a Korean series would prove successful as people were starting to pay attention to Korean media. Not only that, Squid Game is one of a kind, and there's not really anything like that been done before. Squid Game is not the only Korean series present on the streaming app. In fact, they have a vast library of Korean movies and TV shows such as Alice in Borderlands and Sweet Home. If you're a fan of zombie movies, be sure to check out #Alive. These shows and movies have all been very successful in the app, and it proves that Korean cinema has a place at home on Netflix. Squid Game is currently streaming on Netflix and continues to be one of the most popular titles on the app, and it is thought that a second season is currently in production. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Eerie Nerd Podcast. Be sure to follow me on all social media, and if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do by tweeting me at earth_eerie, or you can email me at eerieearth@hotmail.com. Thanks again, and be sure to tune in next week for more from the Eerie Nerd Podcast. Bye-bye for now.